Hey everybody, AJ here, and welcome back to the Eagle Ray channel. This is the live stream. We have videos coming out every Wednesday, but on Sunday we do the live stream. It's much more informal. We're going to cover a few things today. We usually talk about electric marine news. So it's going to be more just about batteries today across all markets, but it is very relevant to marine batteries as well. So we're going to start with the news. We're going to get to the latest video that I published a few days ago, where I'm going to do some commentary behind the scenes stuff on what happened in the video from earlier this week. And then at the end, we'll talk about the giveaway that I'm currently running for this Milwaukee angle grinder. And I'll tell you guys about the rules. And if anybody has any questions at the end, you can leave them in the chat, and I'll try and get to everybody's questions. It's early days on the Eagle Ray channel, so it's going to be pretty quiet in the chat, and that's fine. But if anybody has any questions, just leave them there, and I'll get to them at the end. So let's jump straight into the news, because there's been a lot of talk recently about how lithium batteries are basically just as evil as the oil industry, and that everybody should boycott lithium batteries and never touch them again. It's much more complicated than that, in my opinion, but we're going to start by looking at where a lot of this hype cycle around why we should boycott lithium came from. And I think largely it came from this guy named Siddhartha Kara, I think his name is. Yeah, Siddhartha Kara is a journalist who's been studying the Congo a lot. There's this pocket of the Congo where there's just a whole bunch of industrial mining happening, and basically all of the cobalt, not all of it, but like 3/4 of the world's cobalt comes from this area, and the conditions there are just brutal. So I'm going to let Siddhartha Kara talk on, this is a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast that kind of details exactly what's going on there, what's been going on there for many, many years. Let me see if I can get the audio right to make sure you guys can hear this. 1 second.
And they dig in absolutely subhuman, gut-wrenching conditions for $1 a day, feeding cobalt up the supply chain into all the phones, all the tablets, and especially electric cars.
And we're looking at a video now. Jamie, what is this? The mines?
This is his video. So I think so.
This is so crazy to see.
This is the bottom of the supply chain of your iPhone, of your Tesla, of your Samsung. I mean, I'm just naming those companies.
Right.
It's all of them, right? All of them. We're not just picking on them. And here's what you need to know, Joe, about this video. I was the first outsider to get into this mine. And that's why it's just a really short video that I was able to take. This is an industrial cobalt mine where there's not supposed to be one artisanal miner. Now, that's the term used for people who are just digging by hand as opposed to tractors and excavators. There's not supposed to be one here. That's what the story is told at the top of the chain. This mine, and I can name it, it's called Shabara. There's not supposed to be one artisanal miner here, according to the consumer-facing tech companies and EV companies buying this cobalt. Lo and behold, I walk into this place, and this is what I see. There's more than 15,000 human beings crammed into that pit, digging by hand. And if you have sound, you hear the mallets, you hear the shouting, you hear the grunts. It's a mass of humanity. You might expect to see a scene like this.
So there's a term that gets used, clean cobalt.
There's no clean cobalt.
It's not real.
No. It's all marketing. It's all PR. It's a fiction. Just like that place, there's not supposed to be any artisanal mining there. It's all done industrially. That's the story told at the top of the chain, and people assume, the marketing teams at big tech and EV companies assume, well, who's going to go down there and actually walk into the place and grab a video that shows, no, it's actually all raw human force that is clanking that cobalt out of the ground. So there's no clean cobalt. There's not a single company on planet Earth that makes a device that has a rechargeable battery in it that can reliably and justifiably claim that their cobalt isn't coming from sources like that. And that's the truth that needs to get out there. That's the truth people need to understand, because this is a story that goes back generations. There's these
Okay, so that is very disheartening, obviously. There's a lot to unpack there. I think the challenge we have right now is I think a whole bunch of people saw this segment on the Joe Rogan podcast and spread the word across the internet very quickly that obviously lithium batteries are not all they're cracked up to be. We should boycott them. Electric cars, it turns out, are just as bad as gas cars, and you should never buy one, etc., etc. So it's become this very politically charged issue, unfortunately. And to me, it doesn't need to go political in order to really get down to the nitty gritty of what's happening here. Obviously, I think there should be no political sides taken on the idea of nobody wants child slave labor. That's obviously terrible. So no matter what, we should all do what we need to do to take ourselves out of the equation that's contributing to that. So, for example, what Siddhartha Kara said here is it's not just electric cars. So the idea of we shouldn't adopt electric cars after all is not going to cut it, because I don't think a lot of people know this, but if you've worked in tech, you may know this. You've probably all seen this type of battery. This is an 18650. It's an NMC chemistry. It stands for nickel, manganese, and cobalt. And cobalt is the main power activator here. It's the thing that they put in these batteries to make them basically supercharged. The ones that have cobalt in them they tend to be higher power, higher energy density than other types of batteries. And because of that, cobalt is a hot commodity. It's fairly rare. It's hard to find. Like we just saw, it's coming mostly from this one spot in Africa right now. And because of that, just year after year, not just electric car companies, but all of the big tech companies are sending larger and larger orders to these industrial cobalt mines, and kind of not splitting hairs maybe as much as they should about what are the conditions in these mines. We saw similar things with high-tech components, microchips and memory chips in China, and the conditions in the factories 10 years ago were completely awful, and there was a lot of pressure put on the tech companies by consumers to do something about it, to go send auditors into these factories and refuse to buy these components unless the conditions are up to a standard that the customers are comfortable with. So the same thing actually needs to happen, in my opinion, in the battery industry, because boycotting electric cars is not going to do it. This battery is in electric cars because once upon a time it was used mostly in laptops. And as it became popular in laptops, it grew from there to satisfy the power needs for the entire tech industry. This is not a laptop pack. This is a server rack pack. So basically everything that I'm doing right now, I'm live streaming to you. You're watching me. We are all using a cloud server to do this. And that cloud server is driven by a data farm. It's this big warehouse somewhere else in the world. Usually it's within 1,000 miles of your location, because Google and Apple and Amazon, they build these factories everywhere, and they fill them floor to ceiling, wall to wall with server racks. And each one of those server racks has one of these. It's a lithium backup power module, and it has 4 of these inside it. And so basically big tech is 100% powered by lithium batteries that have cobalt in them. And that is a big part of why these mines are so popular, and it's so effective for these companies to kind of cut costs by doing things like bringing children in. They probably don't have 8-year-olds because they're not quite strong enough to swing a pickaxe yet, but they've got 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds there, and it's disgusting. And you see how tightly they're packed in. Like, you can't even turn around in an environment right like that without hitting somebody with your pickaxe. So what needs to happen, in my opinion, is you don't necessarily need to boycott anything that has cobalt in it, because I don't believe that's even feasible. In this day and age, with how prevalent cobalt is in every electrical component that you and I both use, you would literally have to become Amish. If you're going to boycott cobalt, you would have to give up not just electric cars, but all computers, all smartphones, all tablets, all smart TVs, all smart refrigerators, smart washing machines. It's in everything, and so you have to become Amish if you're going to boycott it entirely. So it seems to me the better way to go is to walk into the Apple store, send an email to Apple, and contact anybody who works at Apple or Tesla or any of these other companies any way you can, and let them know, I'm not going to buy your next iPhone unless you show clear evidence that you are going personally to these mines and making sure that the conditions are satisfactory. No child slave labor, no 10 people in 10 square feet. All of this stuff is crazy and it needs to stop. And so if we as the consumer let Apple know that their bottom line is going to be hit when we don't buy the next iPhone, that's when this stuff is going to start to change. But it's even more complicated than that, unfortunately, because there are only so many options that a company like Apple has, because the cobalt industry knows, well, if you don't buy from us in this little pocket in the Congo, where else are you going to go? There's practically nothing else. And so it's crucially important, in my opinion, to have our government step in. And this is one of the few cases where I think subsidy is not just appropriate, but important. So normally I'm all about the free market, and I love when companies kind of bootstrap things into existence. But this is one of those cases where, in my opinion, we need cobalt mining in the States. We need lithium mining in the States. And that's going to be difficult too. There are a lot of trade-offs with this stuff. So for example, this new lithium mine is now breaking ground on the border of Nevada and Oregon. And it's been a huge political point of contention for a long time, because as we've seen with lots of oil industry situations in the past, lithium mining is now a big enough operation that it's rubbing up against other issues that people have with destroying the environment. So we're trying to save the environment by going green with lithium batteries rather than oil. And in the process, we have a lot of local environments being destroyed. So in the case of northern Nevada, there's sacred ground that Native Americans are trying to protect. And just, I think a few weeks ago, on January 5th, there were protests outside the Reno courthouse, because just a couple hundred miles north, they're starting to dig into the ground now, and the Native Americans don't want that land touched. So there are big issues at play, and basically at this point, we're all in kind of a situation where when we vote on Capitol Hill and when we vote with our dollars, we have to make choices between, do we destroy sacred Native American ground, or do we let child slave labor continue? These are not easy decisions. But it seems to me that if you're the human race has energy needs, and the only way to satisfy those needs is to create some kind of destruction somewhere localized on the planet. And to me, it's very important that the root mining operations that lead to batteries that get used across dozens of industries, it's important that that stuff happens on U.S. soil, because it's not just an ethics issue, it's a political issue that can become very dangerous. For example, in Europe right now, they're very beholden to Russia for natural gas and oil, so they can't make the political decisions that they might otherwise with regard to something like the Ukraine war, because they have to weigh it against the possibility that they won't have oil next year if they do. We would be in a very similar situation with China, because China manufactures most of our lithium batteries. A vast, vast majority. In fact, I think Tesla is the only company that has a joint partnership with Panasonic to manufacture lithium batteries right here on U.S. soil. And they only make Tesla batteries, and they put them in Tesla cars and in Tesla Powerwalls. And so they don't have enough supply to make batteries for anybody else. What we actually need to stop all this child labor stuff is to give Apple and Amazon and everybody else options for who they can go to pay a higher price, if that's what it takes, so that the companies in the Congo have pressure to fix their practices. Otherwise, these companies stop buying from them. And so that requires us having things like this new cobalt mine that's in Idaho. And let's see here. In Idaho, America's first and only cobalt mine in decades is opening. We shut cobalt mines down decades ago because they were very pollutant to the atmosphere. They were usually open quarries, and so they'd send just tons of cobalt into the air. If we do cobalt mining again, we have to do it better. Often that means digging underground tunnels. Is much more expensive that way. But in my opinion, it has to be done over the next few decades in order to stop things like these child labor atrocities that are happening elsewhere in the world. So these are big picture things that we're talking about, but I think it's important to zoom out in situations like this, because it's not just about whether or not you buy an electric car. That might not fix the problem. If you zoom out far enough, then you can see the big picture and you can decide what you want to vote on with your dollars accordingly. So Idaho's only cobalt mine is the only mine in the United States. The CEO of the company that owns it says they viewed it as strategically important and an asset for the country, and I completely agree with that. And that's why if government orgs like the Department of Energy is going to give money to any company to play favorites, as it were. I don't usually like it when the government does that, but this is one of those cases where it's not only okay to do it, it needs to happen so that we're less reliant on China for batteries in the future. Because no matter how you slice it, more and more batteries are going to get bought in this country every year, whether they're for your boat or for your car or for some cloud server that you're using to run your devices. So the big picture, as I said, much more complicated. Regardless of how you feel about this politically, the Biden administration has invested $3 billion into U.S. supply chain for advanced batteries, and that's probably going to go to things like lithium and cobalt mining. I'm very happy to see that. And in light of everything we just discussed, I hope you guys feel the same. Regardless of how you feel about Biden, like this, as I said, this doesn't have to be a political thing. I think everybody should be on the same page, given all the information about here's what's happening with child slave labor somewhere in the world. It's possibly our fault, at least in part, and here's what we could do about it. So let's try and all get on the same page. We don't have to divide on party lines on stuff like this, in my opinion. Okay, so all of that's very stressful, very potentially politically dividing. I don't like to do politics on this channel because for me, electric DIY is supposed to be fun. So we're going to jump back into the Eagle Ray channel. We're going to get to the video that just came out. It's the third video in the Yikes series because I'm trying to build a small boat so that we can test electric batteries and motors. And it didn't really go well for the first couple weeks. It started to go better right about the third week. So this is the third video where you're going to see me get it on the water without sinking for the first time ever. Here it comes. Very careful with wood screws. It's so easy to strip them. DIY. In this video, we build the cheapest electric boat that money can DIY. In the last video, we sank the world's cheapest DIY electric boat. There we go. In this video, we're going to make sure these kayaks are waterproof. Brought my boat in for inspection. Absolutely no water intrusion. Hey everybody, AJ here, and welcome back to the Eagle Ray channel where we do all things DIY electric boats. Marine motors, batteries, solar panels, you name it. If it's got volts and it's on a boat, you're in the right place. In the last episode, we sank the boat. There's no way to sugarcoat it. This boat is not seaworthy yet. And I can't call this project a success until the darn thing can be on the water all day long. But also, if it does sink, I need to be able to disassemble it quickly. Those kayaks are bolted to the deck in several places, and it takes way too long to disconnect them. So in this episode, we're going to solve both of those problems. Number one, we're going to make sure that these kayaks are waterproof, and number two, we're going to replace those regular bolts with these quick release brackets. These are the same kind of thing that you'd have on a bicycle seat. But before we get into today's build, I want you all to know how hard it is to register a brand new boat, because that was an adventure in and of itself. I just got out of the game and fish department. I brought my boat in for inspection because I talked to them yesterday over the phone. They have a registration process online, but you can't use it for a homemade boat. So I talked to them over the phone. They told me you just need to bring it in for an inspection. We need to get a quick look at it and everything will go like clockwork. They did not specify that I need a lot of documentation to go with it. So I just drove 100 miles from my house, found out that I need to bring the receipt for the purchase of each kayak. I need a bill of sale for each kayak, if those are different documents than the receipt. And I need a manufacturer's certificate of origin for each kayak. And then they're going to issue me a registration fee for each kayak. Even though they're one boat, I strapped them together and bolted them in. They're still going to charge me 2 different registration fees. And I even asked them, what if it had just been 2 plastic pontoons? Then they wouldn't have VIN numbers at all. So you can register it as one boat, but because there are VIN numbers on each, you're not going to. So I heard from a lot of people online recently that normally it's much easier to register a new boat, even if you built it from scratch. Inspections should be done much closer to your house because they have little offices all over the state in most cases. They have an office right here in my hometown of Lake Havasu. You'd think they would because it's a big lake town. But they apparently don't do inspections here in Havasu. I'm not sure why. I didn't really think it would be a good idea if they did, because I'm going to be building a lot of boats. Here, what I would do differently, it's an easy fix actually. I would just not attach the kayaks. So if you brought the deck and just the PVC pipes, you can register that as a boat. They have a raft classification on their website even. So you could just call this a raft and get one registration number for that. And then you wouldn't have to register these. And when you bring this home, then you could just attach them after the fact. Is the game warden really going to ask you for 3 registration cards for one boat? And if they did, then you could just play dumb and say, I didn't know I need 3 registration cards for one boat. I drove 200 extra miles today, so it actually cost me 50 extra bucks in gas, 20 extra bucks for an extra one of these pieces of paper. As you can imagine, I'm a little irritated, but I don't want to send too much hate to the game and fish department. You know, so if you're in Havasu, if you make a boat from scratch, you're going to have to drive to Kingman. It's quite a drive. Stickers on both kayaks, and so now it's time to waterproof these bad boys. So without further ado, let's do stuff. You can see how many holes I've cut into each of these kayaks at this point. Looking back on it, if I were to do a project like this again, I would absolutely only cut one big hole somewhere near the back of the kayak, get everything done that I did on this entire series, and then close it up so that I don't have to keep opening and patching and potentially causing more leaks. It was quite frustrating to have to cut these kayaks over and over again as I figured out what I needed to put on the inside. In retrospect, I could have made it much simpler. This transom with these Loctite liquid nails, premium construction adhesive. Obviously, this stuff is not built for that purpose, but you know what? I used the JB Weld, literally labeled water weld. It is designed for this purpose, and that didn't waterproof the transom. I put JB Weld on all of these bolt holes, both the outside and the inside. So I imagine that maybe those are waterproof, but I'm not sure about the plastic weld seals I did recently here or here. But these bolt holes are still here from the factory, and I don't know if those are perfectly waterproof. And this section of the kayak is likely to be submerged, so what I'm gonna do is lather the whole thing up with liquid nails everywhere I see there might be potential for a hole, including the VIN number. Now, the Department of Game and Fish told me that it is illegal to remove the VIN number. Don't look now, Game and Fish Department. I'm doing something illegal. Uh-oh. Oh, look at that, I fixed it. And hopefully that is waterproof. We're going to find out tomorrow. The lake won round 1, but we are here for round 2. I think I've successfully waterproofed the transom on both of these, and we're about to find out for sure. Definitely didn't see any drops. Anybody who's wondering about VIN numbers in general, I joke about it in this video just because it's 2 kayaks that became 1 boat, so it should have 1 VIN number in my opinion. That's not to say that I think that VIN numbers are dumb and shouldn't exist at all. Like, I agree that they should keep track of VIN numbers for ownership and registration and potential theft purposes. I obviously understand why that's there in normal conditions. I had a hard time with why they weren't able to see that this is an obvious exception. With a hand drill, I took minutes to get through just that part. Now I gotta get through this part, I gotta get through the other side on both, and then I gotta do the entire other wheel, same thing. Rather than spending hours drilling with a hand drill anymore, I'm gonna get myself a drill press. I know I've recently said that no one should ever buy anything from Harbor Freight, but you know what? I can't help myself. They have this way of speaking to my inner cheapskate. It's a drill press. It's such a simple piece of machinery. It feels like there must be no way to screw it up. Apparently I haven't learned my lesson yet, guys. This is the tray that you're supposed to set something on that you want to drill into. It won't tighten. This, by the way, is near impossible to tighten by hand. I'm gonna see if I can crank it. See, unless I put 2 hands on it. So the way that bracket works is if you put the pin into the side that has threads, it won't be able to reach the other side. Whereas if you put it in from the other side that doesn't have threads, it'll reach the threads from the other side, and then it'll begin to clamp both of those together. And I didn't realize that. I assumed that both sides had threads, and that ended up not being the case, and I figured that out by putting it in the right way when I got the second drill press. And that's when I realized it was actually my fault that the thing didn't work the first time. But you know what? When I brought it back to Harbor Freight, I didn't want to return it. I put it on the tabletop there and I said, I don't want to return this, but I can't figure out how this part works. If you guys can show me how to tighten this, then I won't return it. And 2 employees there couldn't figure it out the same way that I couldn't figure it out. So I ended up returning it. Going to the launch ramp, gonna swim with a lot of fishes. Wait a minute. Anybody who knows what that brand Tama is, get some cool points. So far, so I think we can call the waterproofing a tentative success, but I need to do a lot of tests using this boat for videos in the near future, so we're gonna see if it stands the test of time. But no matter how much time you spend on a project, there is always more to do. For instance, I was really dissatisfied with the rope that we used when we put this boat together. If you recall in a previous video, there's an extra line tied to the bow. That was necessary to keep the noses of each kayak from spreading too far apart as they cut through the water. And even with all that rope as tight as it can be, the whole platform feels pretty flimsy. So to be honest, I'm not really comfortable doing multi-hour tests on this boat every day with only rope holding it together. And that's why starting next week, we're gonna be replacing the rope with more aluminum. I'm gonna figure out how to build a forward bracket system that will make the bow just as sturdy as the transom. So that's it for this video, guys. Like and subscribe and join us on Sunday at 2 p.m. where I'm gonna be giving away. And here's where I do the pitch for the giveaway. I'm pitching the idea of giving you things for free. So there you go. The Milwaukee angle grinder is one of my first tools that I ever bought. I've only been using power tools for a couple of years because I was a computer programmer before that. And here, let me turn this off before we get some ads running behind us. 1 second, there we go. Okay, Milwaukee angle grinder, one of my first power tools, one of the best tools in my arsenal. You can cut metal, you can polish metal, you can grind paint off of metal. This is a must-have if you're working with anything metal, basically. And those of you who already have a grinder, you probably know. But if you don't have a cordless one, then you probably want to stick around for these live streams, because when I hit 1,000 subscribers, you can get a cordless one for free. And I am including a Milwaukee battery with it. It's not a brand new battery, but it's a like new battery because it's one that I hardly ever use. It's a 5 amp hour. And those batteries are ridiculously expensive. I think I paid $140 for that battery because I needed it on a whim. And I ran to Home Depot, and that's what it cost at the time. It was it was COVID pricing. Everything was more expensive, and so that battery was just stupidly expensive at the time. And anybody who doesn't know, like, you can buy knockoff Milwaukee batteries or any other power tool brand. The knockoffs are basically just as good. They're typically slightly lower power, but the price is like a fifth of the price. So I'm going to be experimenting with a lot of knockoff power tool batteries for driving motors on my boats in the near future. So that'll be fun. But before we wrap up, I would like to just go over the rules again real quick of the Milwaukee giveaway, because that is not that complicated, but I just want to give you guys a reminder. So down in the description of every single video, this is the video that came out just this past week. At the bottom, there's the Milwaukee Angle Grinder giveaway rules at this bit.ly link. If you just copy this and paste it in a browser tab, you get Milwaukee Angle Grinder giveaway rules. And right at the top here, I list the 5 main requirements for eligibility. So number 1, you have to be at least 18. Number 2, you have to have a shipping address in the lower 48 United States. Number 3, you have to have control of an active YouTube account and an active email address that are connected. Beyond that, you basically just need to be signed into that YouTube account and present during the live stream where I give away the grinder. So as soon as I hit 1,000 subscribers at some point during one of these upcoming weeks, that Sunday, I'm going to give away the Milwaukee Angle Grinder at that live stream right at the end. So rather than going over the rules, we'll actually do a giveaway drawing instead. So you want to be there, and I'll see you in the chat. I will be able to check your YouTube name and go to YouTube and see that you're subscribed to me. And then I will, if you have an email address listed on your account, I'll just send you an email at that address. If you don't, then I'm going to have you email me at contest@eagleray.com. And we can, when the drawing happens, we can go over the rules of how I'm going to verify that that email is connected to that YouTube account. It's not that complicated, but it is too much detail for right now. It is all written in the description of the rules here in this page if you want to read it. So that's all we are going to cover today, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next week, because we're going to do this, like I said, every Sunday. The new Eagle Ray video, the 4th video in the Yak Tune series, is coming out this coming Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. And like always, get out on the water and enjoy yourself. I try and wrap up by letting you guys know that I used to be in tech. I used to be a programmer. Now I do nothing but work on boats all day, and I love it, and I hope that everybody who watches this can have at least a taste of the same kind of thing. Getting out into your local environment and enjoying the weather, enjoying a local body of water is amazing. And I hope everybody can experience that the way I've been able to. I feel so blessed to be able to do that, and I want to share that with everybody. So until next time, guys.